Yeah. This is a reading from Krishna book. We can start with the introduction prayer on page 1. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Pahimam. We're reading Krishna book, chapter 41, page 296. Krishna enters Mathura. While Akrura was within the water or in space, Akrura said, "My dear Lord, all wonderful things that are happening within this world, either in the sky or in the water or on the land, are factually appearing in your universal form. So when I have seen you, what wonderful things have I not seen?" This statement confirms the Vedic version that one who knows Krishna knows everything, and that one who has seen Krishna has seen everything, regardless of how wonderful a thing may be. "My dear Lord," Akrura continued, "there cannot be anything more wonderful than your transcendental form. When I have seen your transcendental form, what is there left to see?" After saying this, Akrura immediately started driving the chariot, and by the end of the day they reached the precincts of Mathura. As they rode from Vrindavan to Mathura, all the passer-by along the way who saw Krishna and Balaram could not help but look at them again and again. In the meantime, the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda and Upananda, had already reached Mathura by going through the forest, and they were awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram in a garden. Upon reaching the entrance to Mathura, Krishna and Balaram got down from the chariot and shook hands with Akrura. Krishna informed him, "You may go home now, because we shall enter Mathura later, along with our associates." Akrura replied, "My dear Lord, I cannot go to Mathura alone, leaving you aside. I am your surrendered servant. Please do not try to avoid me. Please come along with me, with your elder brother and cowherd boyfriends, and sanctify my house. My dear Lord, if you come, my home will be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. The water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers, the fire god, and all other demigods. Bali Maharaj has become famous simply by washing your lotus feet, and he enjoyed all material opulences and later on was elevated to the highest position of liberation. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds, but is carried on the head of Lord Shiva. The ancestors of Bhagirath, sanctified by this water, achieved the heavenly planets. O Supreme Lord of Lords, O Master of the universe, one can achieve piety simply by hearing about your transcendental pastimes. O Supreme Narayana, who are praised with select verses, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you."
On hearing this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, replied, quote, "Akrura, I shall surely come to your home with my elder brother, Balaram, but only after killing all the demons who are envious of the Yadu dynasty. In this way I shall please all my relatives." End quote. Akrura became a little disappointed by these words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he could not disregard the order. He therefore entered Mathura and informed Kamsa about the arrival of Krishna, and then he entered his own home. After Akrura's departure, Lord Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys entered Mathura to see the city. They observed that the gate of Mathura was made of first-class marble, very well constructed, and that the doors were made of pure gold. There were gorgeous orchards and gardens all around, and the whole city was encircled by canals, so that no enemy could enter very easily. They saw that all the crossroads were decorated with gold, and that there were copper and brass storehouses for stocking grain. And there were many rich men's houses, all appearing symmetrical, as if constructed by one engineer. The houses were decorated with costly jewels, and each and every house had nice compounds of trees bearing fruits and flowers. The corridors and verandas of the houses were decorated with silk, cloth, and embroidery work in jewels and pearls. In front of the balcony windows were pigeons and peacocks walking and cooing. All the grain dealers' shops within the city were decorated with different kinds of flowers and garlands, newly grown grass, and pleasing flowers like narcissus and roses. The entrance doors of the houses were decorated with water pots filled with water. A mixture of water, yogurt, sandalwood pulp, and flowers was sprinkled all around the doors, which were also decorated with burning lamps of different sizes. All over the doors were decorations of fresh mango leaves and silk festoons.
When the news spread that Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys were within Mathura city, all the inhabitants gathered, and the ladies and girls immediately went up to the roofs of the houses to see them. They had been awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram with great anxiety, and in their extreme eagerness to see Krishna and Balaram, the ladies did not dress themselves very properly. Some of them placed their clothes in the wrong place. Some anointed their eyes on one side only, and some wore ankle bells only on one leg, or wore only one earring. Thus, in great haste, not even decorated properly, they went to see Krishna from the roofs. Some of them had been taking their lunch, but as soon as they heard that Krishna and Balaram were in the city, they left their eating and ran to the roofs. Some of them were in the bathroom taking their baths, but without properly finishing their baths. They went to see Krishna and Balaram. Some were engaged in feeding their children breast milk, but they put their babies aside and went to see Krishna and Balaram. Passing by very slowly and smiling, Lord Krishna immediately stole their hearts. He who is the husband of the goddess of fortune passed through the street like an elephant. For a very long time, the women of Mathura had heard about Krishna and Balaram and their uncommon characteristics, and they were very much attracted and eager to see them. Now, when they actually saw Krishna and Balaram passing on the street and saw them sweetly smiling, the ladies' joy reached the point of ecstasy. When they actually saw them with their eyes, they took Krishna and Balaram within their hearts and began to embrace them to their fullest desire. Their bodily hairs stood up in ecstasy. They had heard of Krishna, but they had never seen him, and now their longing was relieved. After going up on the roofs of the palaces of Mathura, the ladies, their faces joyful, began to shower flowers upon Krishna and Balaram. When the brothers were passing through the streets, all the brahmanas in the neighborhood went out with sandal water and flowers and respectfully welcomed them to the city. All the residents of Mathura began to talk among themselves about the elevated and pious activities of the people of Vrindavan. The residents of Mathura were surprised at the pious activities the cowherd men in Vrindavan must have performed in their previous lives to be able to see Krishna and Balaram daily as cowherd boys. While Krishna and Balaram were passing in this way, they saw a washerman and a dyer of clothing. Krishna was pleased to ask him for some nice clothing. He also promised that if the washerman would deliver the nicest dyed cloth to him, The washerman would become very happy, and all good fortune would be his. Krishna was not a beggar, nor was he in need of clothing, but by this request he indicated that everyone should be ready to offer Krishna whatever he wants. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness.
Unfortunately, this washerman was a servant of Kamsa, and therefore could not appreciate the demand of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the effect of bad association. He could have immediately delivered the clothing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who promised him all good fortune. But being a servant of Kamsa, the sinful demon could not accept the offer. Instead of being pleased, he was very angry and refused the Lord's request, saying, "How is it that you are asking for clothing which is meant for the king?" The washerman then began to instruct Krishna and Balaram, "My dear boys, in the future don't be so impudent as to ask for things which belong to the king. Otherwise, you will be punished by the government men. They will arrest you and punish you, and you will be in difficulty. I have practical experience of this fact. Anyone who unlawfully wants to use the king's property is very severely punished." On hearing this, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, became very angry at the washerman, and striking him with the upper portion of his hand, he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman fell down dead on the ground. In this way, Lord Krishna confirmed the statement of the Brahma Samhita that every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes. Without a sword, but simply with his hand, he cut off the head of the washerman. This is proof that the Supreme Lord is omnipotent. If he wants to do anything, he can do it without extraneous help.
After this ghastly incident, the employees of the washerman immediately dispersed, leaving the clothing. Krishna and Balaram took possession of it and dressed according to their choice. The rest of the clothes were offered to the cowherd boys, who also used them as they desired. What they did not use remained there. Krishna, Balaram, and the boys then proceeded along the main road. In the meantime, a devotee tailor took the opportunity of service and prepared some nice clothes from the cloth for Krishna and Balaram. Thus, being very nicely attired, Krishna and Balarama looked like elephants dressed with colored clothing on the full moon day or the dark moon day. Krishna was very much pleased with the tailor and gave him the benediction of Sarupya Mukti, which means that after leaving his body, he would be liberated and would attain a four-handed body, exactly like that of Narayana in the Vaikuntha planets. Krishna also granted him that as long as he would live, he would earn sufficient opulence to be able to enjoy sense gratification. By this incident, Krishna proved that those who are Krishna conscious devotees will not be lacking material enjoyment of sense gratification. They will have sufficient opportunity for such things, but after leaving this body, they will be allowed to enter the spiritual planets of Vaikuntha Loka or Krishna Loka, Goloka, Vrindavana.
After dressing nicely, Krishna and Balaram went to a florist of the name Sudama. As soon as they reached the precinct of his house, the florist immediately came out and with great devotion fell down on his face to offer his respectful obeisances, and offered a nicety to Krishna and Balaram, and asked his assistant to bring out flowers, betel nuts, and pulp of kanda. The florist's welcome greatly satisfied the Lord. The florist very humbly and submissively offered his prayers to the Lord, saying, "My dear Lord, because you have come to my place, I thank all my forefathers and all my worshipful superiors are pleased and delivered. My dear Lord, you are the supreme cause of all causes of this cosmic manifestation. But for the benefit of the residents of this earthly planet, you have appeared with your planetary portion to give protection to your devotees and to annihilate the demons. You are equally disposed as the friend of all living entities. You are the supersoul, and you do not discriminate between friend and enemy. Yet you are pleased to give your devotees the special result of their devotional activities. My Lord, I am praying that you please tell me whatever you wish me to do, because I am your eternal servant. If you would order me to do something, it would be a great favor to me. The florist Sudama was greatly pleased within his heart by seeing Krishna and Balaram in his place, and thus, as his choicest desire, he made 2 exquisite garlands of various flowers and presented them to the Lord. Krishna and Balaram were very much pleased with his sincere service, and Krishna offered the florist his salutation and benedictions, which he is always prepared to bestow upon the surrendered souls. When the florist was offered benedictions, he begged from the Lord that he might remain his eternal servant in devotional service, and by such service do good to all living creatures. By this, it is clear that the devotee of the Lord in Krishna consciousness should not be satisfied simply by his own advancement in devotional service. He must be willing to work for the welfare of others. This example was followed by the 6 Goswamis of Vardhana. It is therefore stated in the prayer about them, Lokanam Hitakayanam. Vaishnavas, or devotees of the Lord, are not selfish. Whatever benefits they derive from the Supreme Personality of Godhead as benedictions, they want to distribute to all other persons. That is the greatest of all humanitarian activities. Being satisfied with the florist, Lord Krishna not only gave him whatever benedictions he wanted, but over and above that, he offered him all material opulences, family prosperity, a long duration of life, and whatever else his heart desired within the material world.
Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 41st chapter of Krishna. Krishna enters Mathura. Chapter 42, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. After leaving the florist's place, Krishna and Balaram saw a hunchback young woman carrying a dish of sandalwood pulp through the streets. Since Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure, he wanted to make all his companions joyous by cutting a joke with the hunchbacked woman. Krishna addressed her, "O tall young woman, who are you? Tell me, for whom are you carrying this sandalwood pulp in your hand? I think you should offer this sandalwood to me, and if you do so, I am sure you will be fortunate." Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he knew everything about the hunchback. By his inquiry, he indicated that there was no use in serving a demon. She would do better to serve Krishna and Balaram and get an immediate result of the service. The woman replied to Krishna, "My dear Shama Sundar, dear beautiful dark boy, you may know that I am engaged as a maidservant of Kamsa. I am supplying him pulp of sandalwood daily. The king is very much pleased with me for supplying this nice thing, but now I see that there is no one who can better be served by this pulp of sandalwood than you 2 brothers." Being captivated by the beautiful features of Krishna and Balaram, their talking, their smiling, their glancing, and their other activities, the hunchbacked woman began to smear all the pulp of sandalwood over their bodies with great satisfaction and devotion. The 2 transcendental brothers, Krishna and Balaram, were naturally beautiful and had beautiful complexions, and they were nicely dressed in colorful garments. The upper portions of their bodies were already very attractive, and when the hunchbacked woman smeared their bodies with sandalwood pulp, they looked even more beautiful. Krishna was very much pleased by this service, and he began to consider how to reward her. In other words, in order to draw the attention of the Lord, the Krishna-conscious devotee has to serve him in great love and devotion. Krishna cannot be pleased by any action other than transcendental loving service unto him. Thinking like this, Lord Krishna pressed the feet of the hunchbacked woman with his toes and, capturing her cheeks with his fingers, gave her a jerk in order to make her straight. At once the hunchbacked woman became a beautiful straight girl with broad hips, thin waist, and very nice well-shaped breasts. Since Krishna was pleased with the service of the hunchbacked woman, and since she was touched by Krishna's hands, she became the most beautiful girl among women. This incident shows that by serving Krishna, the devotee immediately becomes elevated to the most exalted position in all respects. Devotional service is so potent that anyone who takes to it becomes qualified with all godly qualities. Krishna was attracted to the hunchbacked woman not for her beauty, but for her service. As soon as she rendered service, she immediately became the most beautiful woman. A Krishna-conscious person does not have to be qualified or beautiful. After becoming Krishna-conscious and rendering service unto Krishna, he becomes very much qualified and beautiful.
When the young woman was turned by Krishna's favor into an exquisitely beautiful young girl, she naturally felt very much obliged to Krishna, and she was also attracted by his beauty. Without hesitation, she caught the rear part of his cloth and began to pull it. She smiled flirtatiously and admitted that she was agitated by lusty desires. She forgot that she was on the street and before the elder brother of Krishna and his friends. She frankly proposed to Krishna, "My dear hero, I cannot leave you in this way. You must come to my place. I am already very much attracted to your beauty, so I must receive you well. And since you are the best among males, you must also be very kind upon me." In plain words, she proposed that Krishna come to her home and satisfy her lusty desires. Krishna, of course, felt a little bit embarrassed in front of his elder brother, Balaram. But he knew that the girl was simple and attracted. Therefore, he simply smiled at her. Looking towards his coward boyfriends, he replied to the girl, "My dear beautiful girl, I am very much pleased by your invitation, and I must come to your home after finishing my other business here. Such a beautiful girl as you are, the only means of solace for persons like us who are away from home and not married. Certainly, a suitable girlfriend like you can give us relief from all kinds of mental agitation." Krishna satisfied the girl in this way with sweet words. Leaving her there, he proceeded down the street of the marketplace, where the citizens were prepared to receive him with various kinds of presentations, especially betel nuts, flowers, and sandalwood pulp.
The mercantile men in the market worshipped Krishna and Balaram with great respect. When Krishna was passing through the street, all the women in the surrounding houses came to see him, and some of the women in the surrounding houses, and some of the younger ones almost fainted, being captivated by his beauty. Their hair and tight clothing loosened, and they forgot where they were standing. Krishna next inquired from the citizens as to the location of the place of sacrifice. Kamsa had arranged for the sacrifice called Dhanur Yagya, and to designate this particular sacrifice, he had placed a big bow near the sacrificial altar. The big bow was very big and wonderful and resembled a rainbow in the sky. Within the sacrificial arena, this bow was protected by many constables and watchmen engaged by King Kamsa. As Krishna and Balaram approached the bow, they were warned not to go nearer, but Krishna ignored this warning. He forcibly went up and immediately took the big bow in his left hand. After stringing the bow in the presence of the crowd, he drew it and broke it at the middle into two parts, exactly as an elephant breaks sugar cane in the field. Everyone present appreciated Krishna's power. The sound of the bow cracking filled both sky and land and was heard by Kamsa. When Kamsa heard that what had happened, he began to fear for his life. The caretakers of the bow, who were standing by watching, became very angry, and with their respective weapons in hand, they rushed towards Krishna, shouting, "Arrest him! Arrest him! Kill him! Kill him!" Krishna and Balaram were surrounded. When they understood the sinister motive of the guards, they became angry, and taking up the 2 pieces of the broken bow, they began to beat down all of Kangsa's caretakers. While this turmoil was going on, Kangsa sent a small group of troops to assist the caretakers, but Krishna and Balaram fought with them also and killed them.
After this, Krishna did not proceed further into the sacrificial arena, but went out the gate and proceeded toward the resting camp. Along the way, he visited various places in Mathura city with great delight. Seeing the activities and wonderful prowess of Krishna, all the citizens of Mathura began to consider the 2 brothers to be demigods who had come down to Mathura, and they all looked upon them with great astonishment. The 2 brothers strolled carefree into the street, not caring for the law and order of Kamsa. As sunset approached, Krishna and Balaram and their cowherd boy friends went to the outskirts of the city, where all their carts were assembled. Thus Krishna and Balaram gave some preliminary hints of their arrival to Kamsa, and he could understand what severe type of danger was awaiting him the next day in the sacrificial arena.
When Krishna and Balaram had been going from Vrindavan to Mathura, the inhabitants of Vrindavan had imagined the great fortune of the citizens of Mathura in being able to see the wonderful beauty of Krishna, who is worshipped by his pure devotees as well as the goddess of fortune. The fantasies of the residents of Vrindavan were now actually realized, for the citizens of Mathura became fully satisfied by seeing Krishna. When Krishna returned to his camp, he was taken care of by servants who washed his lotus feet, gave him a nice seat, and offered him milk and palatable dishes. After taking supper and thinking of the next day's program, he very peacefully took rest. Thus he passed the night there.
On the other side, when Kamsa came to understand about the breaking of his wonderful bow and the killing of the caretakers and soldiers by Krishna, he could partially realize the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He could realize that the 8th son of Devaki had appeared and that now his death was imminent. Thinking of his imminent death, he was restless the entire night. He began to have many inauspicious visions, and he could understand that Krishna and Balaram, who had approached the precincts of the city, were his messengers of death. Kamsa saw various kinds of inauspicious signs, while both awake and dreaming. When he looked in the mirror, he could not see his head, although the head was actually present. He saw the luminaries in the sky in double, although there was only one set factually. He began to see holes in his shadow, and he heard a high buzzing sound within his ears. All the trees before him appeared to be made of gold, and he could not see his own footprints in dust or muddy clay. In dreams, he saw various kinds of ghosts being carried in a carriage drawn by donkeys. He also dreamed that someone gave him poison and he was drinking it. He dreamed also that he was going naked with a garland of flowers and was smearing oil all over his body. Thus, as Kamsa saw various signs of death, while both awake and sleeping, he could understand that death was certain, and thus in great anxiety he could not rest that night. Just after the night expired, he busily arranged for the wrestling match. The wrestling arena was nicely cleansed and decorated with flags, festoons, and flowers, and the match was announced by the beating of kettle drums. The platform appeared very beautiful due to streamers and flags. Different types of galleries were arranged for respectable persons, kings, brahmanas, and kshatriyas. The various kings had reserved thrones, and others had arranged seats also. Kamsa finally arrived, accompanied by various ministers and secretaries, and he sat the raised platform especially meant for him. Unfortunately, although he was sitting in the center of all his governing executive heads, his heart was palpitating in fear of death. Cruel death evidently does not care, even for a person as powerful as Kamsa. When death comes, it does not care for anyone's exalted position.
When everything was complete, the wrestlers who were to exhibit their skills before the assembly walked into the arena. They were decorated with nice ornaments and dress. Some of the famous wrestlers were Chanura, Mushteka, Shala, Kuta, and Toshala. Being enlivened by the musical concert, they passed through with great alacrity. All the respectable cowherd men who came from Vrindavan, headed by Nanda, were also welcomed by Kamsa. After presenting Kamsa with the milk products they had brought with them, the cowherd men also took their respective seats by the side of the king, on a platform especially meant for them. Thus in the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 42nd chapter of Krishna, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. Chapter 43. The killing of the elephant Kuvalyapida. After taking their baths and finishing all of their morning duties, Krishna and Balaram could hear the beating of the kettle drums in the wrestling arena. They immediately prepared themselves to proceed to the spot to see the fun. When Krishna and Balaram reached the gate of the wrestling arena, they saw a big elephant of the name Kuvalyapida, being tended by a caretaker riding on its head. The caretaker was deliberately blocking their entrance by keeping the elephant in front of the gateway. Krishna could understand the purpose of the caretaker, and he prepared himself by tightening his clothes before combating the elephant. He addressed the caretaker in a very grave voice, as resounding as a cloud. "You miscreant caretaker, give way, let me pass through the gate. If you block my way, I shall send you and your elephant to the house of death personified."
The caretaker, being thus insulted by Krishna, became very angry, and in order to challenge Krishna, as was previously planned, he provoked the elephant to attack. The elephant then moved before Krishna like an inevitable death. It rushed toward him and tried to catch him with its trunk, but Krishna very dexterously moved behind the elephant. Being able to see only to the end of its trunk, the elephant could not see Krishna hiding its legs, but it tried to capture him with its trunk. Krishna again very quickly escaped capture, and he again ran behind the elephant and caught its tail. Holding the elephant by its tail, Krishna began to pull it, and with very great strength he dragged it for at least 25 yards, just as Garuda drags an insignificant snake. Krishna pulled the elephant from this side to that, from right to left, just as he used to pull a calf by its tail in his childhood. After this, Krishna went in front of the elephant and gave it a strong slap. He then slipped away from the elephant's view and ran to its back. Then, falling down on the ground, Krishna placed himself in front of the elephant's two legs and caused it to trip and fall. Krishna immediately got up, but the elephant, thinking he was still lying down, tried to push an ivory tusk through the body of Krishna by forcibly stabbing it into the ground. Although the elephant was harassed and angry, the caretaker riding on its head tried to provoke it further. The elephant then rushed madly toward Krishna. As soon as it came within reach, Krishna caught hold of the trunk and pulled the elephant down. When the elephant and caretaker fell, Krishna jumped on the elephant, broke off one of its tusks, and with it killed the elephant and the caretaker also. After killing the elephant, Krishna took the ivory tusk on his shoulder. Decorated with drops of perspiration and sprinkled with the blood of the elephant, he looked very beautiful, and thus he proceeded toward the wrestling arena. Lord Balaram took the other tusk of the elephant on his shoulder. Accompanied by their cowherd boyfriends, they entered the arena. When Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram and their friends, he appeared differently to different people according to their different relationships, rasas, with them. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure and all kinds of ras. both favorable and unfavorable. He appeared to the wrestlers exactly like a thunderbolt. To the people in general, he appeared as the most beautiful personality. To the females, he appeared to be the most attractive male, Cupid personified, and thus he increased their lust. The cowherd men who were present there looked upon Krishna as their own kinsman, coming from the same village of Vrindavan. The impious Kshatriya kings who were present saw him as the strongest ruler and their chastiser. To the parents of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda, he appeared to be the most loving child. To Kamsa, the king of the Bhoja dynasty, he appeared to be death personified. To the unintelligent, he appeared to be an incapable personality. To the yogis present, he appeared to be the super soul. To the members of the Vishnu dynasty, he appeared to be the most celebrated descendant. Thus appreciated differently by different kinds of people present, Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram and his cowherd boyfriends. Having heard that Krishna had already killed the elephant Kuvalayapita, Kamsa knew beyond doubt that Krishna was formidable. He thus became very much afraid of him. Krishna and Balaram had long arms. They were beautifully dressed, and they were attractive to all the people assembled there. They were dressed as if they were going to act on a dramatic stage, and they drew the attention of all people.
The citizens of Mathura city who saw Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became very much pleased and began to look on his face with insatiable glances, as if they were drinking the nectar of heaven. Seeing Krishna gave them so much pleasure that it appeared as if they were not only drinking the nectar of seeing his face, but were also smelling the aroma and licking up the taste of his body, and were embracing him and Balaram with their arms. They began to talk among themselves about the two transcendental brothers. For a long time, they had heard of the beauty and activities of Krishna and Balaram, but now they were personally seeing them face to face. They thought that Krishna and Balaram were two plenary incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Krishna, Narayana, who had appeared in Vrindavana.
The citizens of Mathura began to recite Krishna's pastimes. His birth as the son of Vasudeva, his being taken into the care of Nanda Maharaja, and his wife Gokula, and all those events leading to his coming to Mathura to favor them. They spoke of the killing of the demon Putana, as well as the killing of Tranvarta, who came as a whirlwind. They also recalled the deliverance of the twin brothers from within the Yama Arjuna trees. The citizens of Mathura spoke among themselves. Can someone help me with that? Sanchatuda, Kesi, Dinakashura, many other demons were killed by Krishna and Balaram in Verdana. Krishna also saved all the cowherd men of Verdana from a devastating fire. He chastised the Kaliya snake in the water of the Yamuna, and he curbed the false pride of the heavenly king Indra. Krishna held up the great Govardhana hill in one hand for 7 continuous days and saved all the people of Gokula from incessant rain, hurricane, and hailstorm. They also began to remember the other enlivening activities. The damsels of Verdana were so much pleased to see Krishna's beauty and participate in his activities that they forgot the troubles of material existence. By seeing Krishna, thinking of him, they forgot all sorts of fatigue. The Mathura citizens discussed the dynasty of Yadus, saying that because of Krishna's appearance in this dynasty, the Yadus would remain the most celebrated family in the whole universe. The citizens of Mathura then began to talk about Balaram. They spoke of his very beautiful lotus petal eyes, and they remarked of him, This boy has killed the Pralamba demon and many others also." While they were thus talking about the activities of Krishna and Balaram, they heard the vibrations of different bands announcing the wrestling match.
The famous wrestler Chanura then began to talk with Krishna and Balaram. "My dear Krishna and Balaram," he said, "we have heard about your past activities. You are great heroes, and therefore the king has called your past activities. We have heard about your past activities. You are great heroes, and therefore the king has called you. We have heard that your arms are very strong. The king and all the people present here desire to see a display of your wrestling abilities. A citizen should be obedient and please the mind of the ruling king. Acting in this way, the citizen attains all kinds of good fortune. One who does not care to act obediently is made unhappy because of the king's anger. You are cowherd boys, and we have heard that while tending your cows in the forest, you enjoy wrestling with each other. We wish, therefore, for you to join with us in wrestling so that all the people present here, including the king, will be pleased." Krishna immediately understood the purpose of Chandra's statements, and he prepared to wrestle with him. But according to the time and circumstance, he spoke as follows. "You are a subject of the king of Bojas, and you live in the jungle. We are also indirectly his subjects, and we try to please him as far as possible. This offer of wrestling is a great favor of his, but the fact is that we are simply boys. We sometimes play in the forest of Vrindavan with our friends who are our own age. We think that to combat persons of equal age and strength is good for us, but to fight great wrestlers like you would not be good for the audience. It would contradict their religious principles." Krishna thus indicated that the celebrated, strong wrestlers should not challenge Krishna and Balaram to fight.
In reply to this, Chanura said, "My dear Krishna, we can understand very well that you are neither a child nor a young man. You are transcendental to everyone, as is your big brother Balaram. You have already killed the elephant Kuvalayapida, who was capable of fighting thousands of other elephants. You have killed him in a wonderful way. Because of your strength, it behooves you to compete with the strongest wrestlers among us. I therefore wish to wrestle with you, and your elder brother Balaram will wrestle with Mushtika." Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 43rd chapter of Krishna, the killing of the elephant Kuvalayapida. Chapter 44, the killing of Kamsa. After Kamsa's wrestlers expressed their determination, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of Madhu, confronted Chanura, and Lord Balaram, the son of Rohini, confronted Mushtika. Krishna and Chanura, and then Balaram and Mushtika locked themselves hand to hand, leg to leg, and each began to press against the other with a view to coming out victorious. They joined palm to palm, calf to calf, head to head, chest to chest, and began to strike each other. The fighting increased as they pushed each other from one place to another. One captured the other and threw him down on the ground, and another rushed from the back to the front of the other and tried to overcome him with a hold. The fighting increased step by step. There was a picking up, dragging, and pushing, and then the legs and hands were locked together. All the arts of wrestling were perfectly exhibited by the parties as each tried his best to defeat his opponent.
But the audience in the wrestling arena was not very much satisfied because the combatants did not appear to be equally matched. They considered Krishna and Balaram to be mere boys before Chanura and Mushtika, who were the strongest wrestlers, as solid as stone. Being compassionate and favoring Krishna and Balaram, the many ladies in the audience began to talk as follows. "Dear friends, there is injustice here. There is injustice here." Another said, "Even in front of the king, this wrestling is going on between incompatible sides." The ladies had lost their sense of enjoyment. They could not encourage the fighting between the strong and the weak. Mushtika and Chanura are just like thunderbolts, as strong as great mountains, and Krishna and Balaram are two delicate boys of very tender age. The principle of justice has already left this assembly. Persons who are aware of the civilized principles of justice will not remain to watch this unfair match. Those taking part in watching this wrestling match are not very much enlightened. Therefore, whether they speak or remain silent, they are being subjected to the reactions of sinful activities. But my dear friends, another lady in this assembly spoke out. Just look at the face of Krishna. There are drops of perspiration on his face from chasing his enemy, and his face appears like a lotus flower with drops of water.
Another lady said, "Don't you see how the face of Lord Balaram has turned especially beautiful? There is a reddish hue on his white face because he is engaged in a strenuous wrestling match with Mushtika." Another lady in the assembly addressed her friend, "Dear friend, just imagine how fortunate in this land of Vrindavan, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is present, always decorated with flower garlands and engaged in tending the cows along with his brother, Lord Balaram. He is always accompanied by his cowherd boyfriends, and he plays his transcendental flute. The residents of Vrindavan are fortunate to be able to constantly see the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, which are worshipped by great demigods like Lord Shiva and by the goddess of fortune. We cannot estimate how many pious activities were executed by the damsels of Rajabhumi, so that they were able to enjoy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by looking upon the unparalleled beauty of his transcendental body. The beauty of the Lord is beyond compare. No one is higher than or equal to him in beauty of complexion or bodily luster. Krishna and Balaram are the reservoir of all kinds of opulence, namely wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. The gopis are so fortunate that they can see and think of Krishna 24 hours a day, beginning from their milking the cows or husking the paddy or churning the butter in the morning. While engaged in cleaning their houses and washing their floors, they are always absorbed in the thought of Krishna.
The gopis give a perfect example of how one can execute Krishna consciousness even while performing various types of material engagements. By constantly being absorbed in the thought of Krishna, one cannot be affected by the contamination of material activities. The gopis, therefore, are perfectly in trance, samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of mystic power. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that one who is constantly thinking of Krishna is a first-class yogi among all kinds of yogis. My dear friends, one lady told another, we must accept the activities of the gopis to be the highest form of piety. Otherwise, how could they have achieved the opportunity of seeing Krishna both morning and evening? In the morning, when he goes to the pasturing ground with his cows and cowherd boyfriends, and in the evening, when he returns with them, playing on his flute and smiling very brilliantly. When Lord Krishna, the super soul of every living being, understood that the ladies in the assembly were anxious for him, he decided not to continue wrestling, but to kill the wrestlers immediately. The parents of Krishna and Balaram, namely Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, Vasudeva and Devaki, were also very anxious because they did not know the unlimited strength of their children. Lord Balaram was fighting with the wrestler Mushtika in the same way that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was fighting and wrestling with Chanara. Lord Krishna appeared to be cruel to Chanara, and he immediately struck him thrice with his fist. The great wrestler was jolted, and to the astonishment of the audience. Chanara then took his last chance and attacked Krishna, just as one hawk swoops upon another. Folding his two hands, he began to strike the chest of Krishna, but Lord Krishna was not even slightly disturbed, any more than an elephant is when hit by a flower garland. Krishna quickly caught the two hands of Chanara and began to wheel him around, and simply by this centrifugal action, Chanara lost his life. Krishna threw him to the ground. Chanara fell just like the flag of Indra, and all his nicely fashioned ornaments were scattered hither and thither.
Krishna Book Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. Mushtika also struck Balaram, and Balaram returned the stroke with great force. Mushtika began to tremble and vomit blood. Distressed, he gave up his vital force and fell down, just as a tree falls down in a hurricane. After the two wrestlers were killed, a wrestler named Kuta came from forward, and Balaram immediately caught him in his left hand and killed him nonchalantly. A wrestler on the name of Shala came forward, and Krishna immediately cracked his head with a kick. A wrestler named Tosha came forward, and he was killed in the same way. Thus all the great wrestlers were killed by Krishna and Balaram, and the remaining wrestlers fled from the assembly out of fear of their lives. All the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna and Balaram approached them and congratulated them with great pleasure. When trumpets resounded, doo-doo-doo-doo, and drums were beaten, the legs, bells on the feet of Lord Krishna and Balaram tinkled. Krishna Ki Jai.